To order. We resume our debate, and it's a great pleasure to welcome our distinguished guest, Your Excellency, President of Poland.
Good afternoon, Honourable Mr. President, the Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I don't have to say how great an honour it is for me to be here today and to speak on behalf of my country, which is Poland. Incidentally, it's the first and the only European country on the list of speakers today, so I feel much more obliged to do a very good job. Well, let me start with saying that since the end of communism in 1989, Poland's tradition to a democratic state and free market economy has witnessed some progress in gender equality for women. Some, not a great one. It's still a limited progress. When you look at the gender inequality index list, you will see that Poland is placed on the honourable 54th place out of 140 countries listed on there. It's somewhere a third way between Finland and Yemen. So we are not as bad as Yemen, which is the worst one, the last one on the list, but it's a long way to go before we can reach the level of Finland. What is taken into consideration when estimating the gender inequality index for a country, as you all probably know, is the level of reproductive health safety, of empowerment for women, both in parliament seats and participation in education, and the level of labour market participation. So let me just now analyze each of them with regards to Poland, and I think with regards to many other European or Eastern European countries. The formulation of equal rights of women and men is found in the Constitution of the Republic of Poland, and it guarantees the equality of women and men in employment, access to promotion, and equality of wages for work of equal value, of course. However, we are still experiencing huge discrepancies in traditional customs that stress the role of women in the private sphere, and the lack of or inconsistent policies targeting gender discrimination and protecting women's rights. Many Polish women still suffer domestic violence and are widely discriminated against in workplaces and in sexual and reproductive health and rights. They are neglected in politics and in labour market. Well, let me start with the key element of this puzzle, which is that due to the influence of the Roman Catholic Church after the communist collapse in 1989, Poland gained one of the most restrictive abortion laws in Europe, and as a result, a huge abortion underground, which is neither safe nor appropriate to Polish women. Since we entered the European Union in 2004, many women decide to travel abroad to have abortions. How did that come about? In the 1980s, Church used the opportunities created by democratic process to intensify its campaign for a complete ban on abortion, and in 1993 such law criminalizing abortion was introduced with very limiting right to termination of pregnancy under 3 conditions: when the pregnancy threatens a woman's health or life, or when the fetus is severely damaged, or when the pregnancy is a result of criminal offense. Denying the woman right to choose between having or not having a baby is denying them one of the principal rights of freedom and choice, and in my opinion this is one of the main factors that puts us on the 54th place on the gender equality index list. Another element is that Poland has no comprehensive and consistent policy on women's rights and gender equality, but I will speak about it a bit later on. When looking at the parliament seats, Polish women are a minority. Their participation in government, both at the national as well as the local level, is below 30%, and that's despite introducing in 2010 the quota system, amounting to 35%. And despite all these efforts, women, even if they do get to campaign, they are marginalized during their campaigns. They are hushed up, they are pushed to the end of the election lists, they are patronized by their colleagues, and the very fact that Ewa Kopacz is now only the second after Hanna Suchocka, female prime minister in Polish history, speaks volumes, I think. When looking closely at women participation in education, we see that statistically Polish women are in general better educated, and we might think that they should have equal, if not better, employment opportunities. Especially when, as I have mentioned before, Polish law ensures equal rights for both women and men, as per the constitution and the labor code. Unfortunately, it turns out that high education levels for women do not translate to labor market participation. Women are economically less active, and there is a higher unemployment rate for women. Additionally, they are paid less, about 20% less in salaries for work comparably similar to the men's work. This cannot be logically explained, I don't think. And what's even worse is that the biggest gaps between men's and women's salary is among the people with very basic or vocational training and education. That amounts to over 30%. That means that where the earnings are low enough, they are even lower for women. 52.9% of women are inactive in the labour market, and that is much more than men. In men, it's only 37%. And this is mainly due to the traditional perceptions of women and men, where women are associated more with being connected to private sphere, and the men that are the ones who are responsible for bringing bread on the table and for the material well-being of the family. This goes back way into the historic times, or into tradition really, but must be stopped. Things are not, of course, as bad as in Russia, where a list of 140 professions reserved for men only still exists and functions. But as I have mentioned before, Polish society remains very much family-oriented and family-focused, where men's role is dominant, and that conviction puts us on the 54th place on the gender inequality index list. Another problem I would like to discuss today is also the growing phenomenon of working poor, where this is an idea where people get salaries that do not cover the cost of living, so they just don't earn enough to be able to support themselves. And it, according to the salary reports in Poland done in 2009, it turns out that the lowest wages are earned by women. And so the working poor class is predominantly women. 1 in 8 employed women fall into that category, in fact. And that has considerably contributed to creating social underclass, where living in poverty for women is pretty much common. And please note, we're not talking about countries that are below number 100 on the list. We still, a third way down, and this kind of circumstance should not be acceptable. Let me just wrap up with saying that the formulation of equal rights for women found in the Constitution of the Republic of Poland guarantees the equality of women and men in employment, in access to promotion, and in quality of wages for work of equal value. So why the gap between men and women is so huge? Why the gender inequality index is still so high in Poland? In my opinion, it's the fact that equality is not just about men and women, about roles or stereotypes. It is linked in many ways to politics, to national history, and to many economic processes. And in politics, Poland has no comprehensive and consistent approach on how to tackle the women's rights and gender equality, and this is something that we do need in order to move forward. A consistent way, firm policies and program who would be raising awareness on the issues discussed here today. Otherwise, Poland will remain in the obscure middle of the gender inequality index list, somewhere in between Norway and Yemen, and far behind the US and many other prominent European countries. Thank you.
Your Excellency Komorowski, thank you very much for your most interesting presentation, and we wish you and your government every progress in your program, and we hope that you will move in the table further up. We move on to our distinguished guests from Japan, and we have Minister of State Gender Equality from Japan. Your Excellency Yoko Tashima, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here with you as the Minister of State Gender Equality of Japan to share with you our outlook on gender-related issues in Japanese society. All such issues are deep-seated, as you know, and my short speech can only scratch the surface, but I hope it gives you at least a feel on what's been going on in Japan, and hopefully a tipping point of changes in large scale will come our way. According to a study released Tuesday by the World Economic Forum, Japan has one of the worst levels of gender equality in the developed world, below that of Tajikistan and Indonesia, coming in 104th out of 142 assessed countries in 2014. The percentage of female lawmakers remains one of the worst of any nation. It is clear there is a lot to be done, and the government needs to take actions more effectively and quickly. Please allow me to briefly talk about how the Gender Equality Bureau had started in Japan. In 1994, the headquarters for the promotion of gender equality was set up within the cabinet. In the reform of the central government, which was implemented in January 2001, the central government was restructured from its former structure of 1 office and 22 ministries to 1 cabinet office and 12 ministries to be able to effectively deal with complex policy issues in the 21st century. Council for Gender Equality and the Gender Equality Bureau were established within this cabinet office. The Gender Equality Bureau is mandated with the formulation overall coordination of plans for matters related to promoting the creation of a gender equal society, as well as promoting the basic plan for gender equality and formulating and implementing plans for matters not falling under the jurisdiction of any particular ministry. There are 6 disciplines. 1. Expansion of women's participation in policy and decision-making processes in all fields in society. 2. Work-life balance for men and women. 3. Elimination of all forms of violence against women. 4. Gender equality for men. Number 5. Support for the promotion of gender equality in regions. And number 6. Gender equality and disaster risk reduction. The current birth rate in Japan is 1.43%. It's been declining for the past 30 years. In order to maintain the population, we need 2.07%. In terms of world ranking, Japan is very low. According to our white papers, it shows that what men think of women working changes depending on the economy at the time. In 1992, as many men as 40% expressed their opinion as it is better if women quit working when they are children until they're old enough to look after themselves, and then women can start working again. 10 years later, the economic situation had changed, and so had their opinion. They would rather have women continue working without breaks. Now, why men became more understanding towards women's continuation in working? The white paper then said that was because socio-economic situations such as fixed wages and increased number of layoffs have greatly influenced. In other words, the fear and sense of urgency that men had at the time had driven men to support women to continue working. But women have not welcomed this, because in many households, regardless of having a job or not, often women are solely responsible for chores and child rearing. They are expected to fulfill these on their own as well as work outside. In this equation, husband's burden would be alleviated, while women's burden only increases. By the same logic, it drives women away not only from having children, but from marriage altogether. There are men who claim they support gender equality, but it is usually on their terms. This situation is so persistent because such ideas have been strongly imprinted since childhood for men, and unfortunately for women also. As you know, I have worked as a professor in gender studies and a feminist long before becoming a policymaker. For many years, I have been working towards improving the social status of women with the slogan that men wash underpants while women earn as the breadwinner. Let's remind ourselves of one of the critical moments in gender studies. In 1949, a French existentialist, Simone de Beauvoir, published a book called Le Deuxième Sexe. She called women the second sex because women are defined in relation to men. It was a controversial book, and it presented sharp insights. There has been nearly 70 years. Has the progress since then been big or small? I wonder what she would say if she were alive now. The head of the gender parity program at the WEF said much work still remains to be done. Achieving gender equality is obviously necessary for economic reasons, but even more importantly, gender equality is a matter of justice. Yes, I cannot agree more. And yet, in recent years, in Japan, there has been a major backlash. There are social movements going backwards. Some people blame me, personally me, for dwindling birth rates. They say because I am an old spinster and I couldn't be married nor have a home like average people, I have turned that against society by involving many women in my beliefs. Some even said that promoting a gender equality society leads to even lower birth rates. In fact, a doctor in philosophy, Ms. Hasegawa, published a bold statement in a newspaper this year that it is only efficient when men are breadwinners, and young men and women in Japan should get married when they're still reasonably young and have 2 or 3 children, problem solved. It is very concerning that in Japan we have such a climate in society which is susceptible to such a backward way of thinking. While, as a matter of fact, study shows advancement of gender equal society increases birth rates, and on the contrary, the increase in number of housewives decreases birth rates and the individual productivity. A gender equal society as our government defined, is a society in which both men and women as equal members have the opportunity to participate in all kinds of social activities at will, equally enjoy political, economic and cultural benefits, and share responsibilities. I mentioned work-life balance earlier as one of the disciplines of gender equality initiatives. In many cases, that actually means work-children balance, which connotes the conflict between these activities that are both productive. They shouldn't be placed in binary opposition in the first place. Companies and home exist within a society which consists of different generations, young and old, and it is important that a paradigm shift in such perception takes place so that in time it can nurture new set of values such as inclusive society with diversity and even appropriate working hours, which seems to have been so impossible to realize in Japanese society for the longest time. I hope I have succeeded to give you a taste of gender issues in modern Japan, and instead of a conclusion, let me give you a food for thought to take away with you, a TV advert that has gained much attention lately. The subtitles are in English.
おはようございます。
なんか顔疲れてんな。残業。
いや、普通に寝ましたけど。
寝てそれおはよ
おはようございます。おはよ
う。おお、髪切った。
これ巻いただけですって。
巻いただけですって。やっぱ可愛いな、あの子。
そうですね、いい子だし。
大丈夫だよ。吉野とは需要が違うんだから。
需要？最近サボってた？変わりたい？変わらなきゃ。
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Excellent, and thank you very much for a very interesting example of what is being done in the direction of women's equality. I think that's very good. We have 3 more interventions from ambassadors from Australia, Brazil, and China. And without further ado, I'm passing on to His Excellency, representative of Australia, Gillian Bird. Over to you.
Thank you. I would like to start my speech by thanking everyone for being in this forum. I would like to say that gender equality is a very important matter for each one of us. For too long, women have been paid less for equal work as compared to their male counterparts. And for too long, women have had no access to education because they were just women. I would like to present the results of a study conducted in Australia not long ago regarding gender inequality, and then I would like to briefly present what we're going to do in Australia to address these issues. First and most importantly, Australians were asked during this study, and from their answers it can be deduced that they see gender inequality as a daily experience. It is something that they face on a daily basis. It is a daily struggle for them, in particular women, but not only women, and we'll see why. One of the main complaints that they have, Australians, is that being a parent, be it a mother or a father, is very difficult. Yes, there is a scheme in Australia for parental leave, and yes, they get paid, both mothers and fathers get benefits from it, but the problem lies within the conditions of such parental leave. The parents that apply for this program get 18 weeks of paid leave, but at the minimum wage, rather than their regular salary. This regulation essentially is forcing men to not take parental leave or to go back to work as soon as possible. Also, and because maternity is a very expensive business, men usually end up spending longer hours at work to compensate for the loss of income of their partners, which usually means that raising a child becomes more and more a mother's responsibility. Another issue is the pay gap between men and women. Now, this happens in almost every country in the world. One particular thing that I would like to talk about is what I call the retirement gap. Now, because men make more than women generally in Australia, they also contribute more to their retirement and to their pensions, which in turn means that when they finally retire, they have more disposable income, and women obviously have less disposable income. Sometimes this makes it so difficult for women that they really struggle to make ends meet once they have retired. They do not have enough income to sustain themselves, and they're in a particularly vulnerable position because they depend on their partners. Finally, also another thing that we have in Australia is that the issues that women face are different depending on their context. Because in Australia we have, for example, indigenous population, and then we also have a very stratified society. We have, for example, the problems that women in low-paid industries face. For example, as women, they would like to have more time off and better health insurance and also better pay. However, women in better paid jobs have different problems. Their problems lie primarily in conciliating their family life and work. To the extent that sometimes, I would say even very often, women give up on the prospect of having children in favor of having a more stable career. For these reasons, we believe that any program that has the aim of empowering women and finally eliminating all these gaps and barriers should be applied in context. There's no point in encouraging women to take time off if that would mean that they wouldn't have enough money to survive. In light of all of this, and after reading the report, I would like to present the initiatives that will be taken. In Australia, we are in the process of creating a new position. This will be held for 5 years. It will be a man or a woman. That is really not important here. And this person will liaise with the government and will be in charge of gender issues. The first objective of this newly appointed official will be contacting the different parties in the Australian Parliament to draft a new law on parental leave. The objective is that the cost of this measure is shared between the government, the administration, and the employers. At the same time, we will also provide more funding for programs that aim at closing the gender gap in all of its forms. We believe this is the way forward, and Australia will certainly take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for your intervention, and we noted these new initiatives. Next intervention is from the ambassador from Brazil, from the Minister of the Environment of Brazil, Isabella Carreira.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished guests and dear participants. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about a topic which is very dear to my heart. And gender equality is on top of the Brazilian political agenda. So today I would like to present a project which aims to tackle gender inequality in a different way. It's called Network of Brazilian Women Leaders for Sustainability. The network of Brazilian women was officially launched at a meeting organized by the Ministry of Environment in 2011 in preparation for the Rio Plus 20. The majority are high-level executives in both the public and private sectors. They are women who have significant influence in their respective institution or organization, who are prepared to use the means and resources at their disposal to promote the increase of feminine leadership in Brazil. Our aim is directed at the construction of a fairer country with greater equality and sustainability. What motivates the networks is the desire to see Brazilian women given recognition and values, as well as to emphasize the crucial role they already play, which still has scope for growth, enabling them to contribute to the development of Brazil as leaders, entrepreneurs, and citizens in every capacity. Because it's not enough for us that women be included in the consumption cycle if it must be a quality consumption. For us, it's not enough that women run business if these businesses are precarious, environmentally predatory, or unhealthy. For us, it's not enough to see women fill the highest post in public and private companies if they do not become leaders in sustainable development. These, in short, are our proposal. But Brazil, which is undergoing a new cycle of development and has a women president for the first time, is a nation united in its diversity around one ideal, the construction of a more dignified, worthier present, and a future built together which we can be proud. Factors are still present which are obstacles to the full participation of women in decision-making roles. Some of factors are the culture of filling position according to gender, the lack of and low publicity of models of female leadership, and the lack of policies that reconcile the demands of work market and those of private life. Despite these obstacles, data shows that women have increased their participation in the work market all over the world, including South America. And they also have a better role in leadership roles. However, the increasing number is not reflected in the increase in power, as men continue to hold the vast majority of top-level posts. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, as well as achieving gender equality through education, women need support all the way. The network highlights how women need to support each other at all levels to achieve greater progress. Also, there are opportunities for women to improve the way they network within themselves, so they support each other. The experience of this network shows the dreams and goals of the participants of the network, made it clear that women leaders are exactly what both politics and business needs more of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your intervention. And I think you pointed out a very important issue of networking, and that's what we will be looking at in the new resolution. It's a great pleasure now to pass on to our representative from China, from the State Council, Vice Chairwoman of National Working Committee on Children and Women. Over to you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. As the Vice Chairwoman of National Working Committee on Children and Women under the State Council, I'm very honored to be here today representing 650 million Chinese women. Influenced by the Asian feudal idea of wifely submission and virtue, women in China had no social or even family status 100 years ago. After Chairman Mao's famous saying, "Women hold up half the sky," women's rights started to be interpreted into the law, and awareness of gender equality spread in the whole nation. Now, Chinese women are very active in all fields of life. According to the report of the 6th National Population Census in 2010, the population of female workers in China from 15 to 59 years old was 490 million. And the female employment rate was 69.9%, which was about 9% higher than the world average rate, 53%. This huge amount of labor force provided abundant human resources for our economic development. However, Chinese women, the same as other women in this world, are also facing unfair treatments, socially and mentally. 53.2% of female workers in China are employed in the industry of agriculture, 16.6% in manufacturing industry, and 11% in wholesale and retail industry. As you can see from these figures, we can notice that 80.8% female were recruited in these 3 industries. This highly centralized phenomenon shows that occupational gender segregation is still very serious. To be more precise,